Hey guys, this is Curtis Alexander. I'm a pharmacist. In this video, let's talk about, can magnesium help with depression? So first thing, magnesium has a long history of being used for mental health disorders, one of those being anxiety. It's known as nature's Valium. So it does appear to help with that. I'll link to a video I did on magnesium helping with anxiety. Another thing to remember, when people think they're low in magnesium, sometimes they'll get their magnesium levels drawn. That's not always the most reliable thing to do because it can be misleading in the fact your serum levels of magnesium can be normal, but you have to remember your magnesium will essentially pull from your bones, from your cells to make sure it stays in your serum. So that doesn't always tell the whole story. We know that as far as depression and anxiety and these neurological conditions, it's involved, magnesium's involved in a lot of those functions. It's also been shown to be neuroprotective in people who've had a stroke. We've seen low magnesium levels in paranoid schizophrenics, and it also helps keep cortisol levels low. So it's definitely involved in a ton of things, many of those neurological. Okay, but the bottom line is, does it help with depression? There have been some studies and they're promising, but they've received some bad press because they weren't properly designed. For example, they didn't have a placebo group to compare somebody not getting it to somebody getting it. They weren't blinded, meaning the people knew what they were taking, so the placebo effect could be there. However, with that being said, they were promising, so it does show promise for it. The one thing to keep in mind, and I'll come back to this a little later, your magnesium levels are very much related to your thyroid function, okay? And like I said, we'll talk about that in a little bit. So now let's talk about diet, because first and foremost, if you feel that you have depression or you've been diagnosed that way and you're concerned if it's magnesium, the first place to look is the food you're eating. A lot of places will recommend foods that contain magnesium that aren't very good foods to be eating, one of which is veggies, grains, those sorts of things. Now, why aren't veggies? Because they contain anti-nutrients, they contain enzymes that inhibit certain body process. Basically, these leafy greens are designed by nature to not be eaten. That's their defense mechanism. So those can be problematic for people. I would lean more towards things like milk and chocolate, ribeye steak, liver. Those are four examples that are fairly high in magnesium. Now, what if you're eating well, but you still are interested in taking magnesium in supplement form? That is an option if you opt for that. If you talk to your doctor and you opt for that, probably the two best forms to take would be magnesium tauronate and magnesium glycinate. I'm partial to glycinate. I'll put a link to a magnesium glycinate product I've personally used, and it's a good product. There are others out there. It's just the one I've used. Also, Epsom salt baths. People come down on magnesium sulfate, which is what Epsom salts are, because of its poor oral absorption, so it gets kind of thrown out. But remember, we're doing Epsom salt baths. We're soaking the magnesium in, absorbing it through our skin. So that is another option as well. The dose tends to be a little over the map, all over the map. In one of the studies, they dosed 125 to 300 milligrams with each meal. With these two salt forms, particularly magnesium glycinate, it should be tolerable. Other magnesium forms, if you tried that dose, would maybe cause loose stools and some GI upset. So my advice would be to start at the low end of the dose, maybe move upwards from there. Again, depending on how good your diet is. The nice thing about the studies is they did notice an improvement in the depression pretty quick. Couple, 2-3 weeks, they started to see improvement. So something to keep in mind. Another thing to keep in mind if you decide to supplement is there are interactions. Even though it's a mineral, we can see interactions with prescription drugs, so make sure to have your pharmacist run a check on those. Also, if you're taking something like zinc at fairly high doses, which you shouldn't be, uh, I don't know if I've made a video about that. I can if I haven't, but it will inhibit magnesium absorption, so that's something to keep in mind. Another couple things to keep in mind is I've had people go, oh man, I supplemented with magnesium and I didn't tolerate it well. I didn't do well, didn't seem to do anything. If you're low in sodium or you have a low vitamin D status, that can be a problem. You kind of have to get those up to par or improve, and then you can start taking magnesium. Otherwise, it can cause people to have side effects, not feel well. Okay, now let's get back to the thyroid real quick. Your thyroid and magnesium go hand in hand. If you have a healthy thyroid, you most likely do not need to supplement with magnesium. Um, but if your thyroid is low or hypothyroid, there's a good chance you may need to supplement with magnesium until your thyroid function improves. Again, I have other videos. I've had thyroid problems in the past. I'll show you, or I've shown you in those videos what I do to help improve your thyroid. Finally, stress. Okay, the more stress you have in your life, whether it's mental stress or physical stress, you're going to see your magnesium burn rate go up, which means you're going to use more magnesium. Again, this kind of comes hand in hand with your thyroid. So those are some things that you have to get dialed in. Okay. Do I think magnesium can be helpful for depression? I personally do. I think it's worth talking to your doctor about. It's cheap. It doesn't have very many side effects. So I do think it's a good option, but also take into account, be honest. If you don't have poor thyroid function, then try to get it from your diet. Just be careful, like I talked about, with some of the diet recommendations out there, they can set you back. So let me know in the comments, have you tried magnesium? Do you know anybody who has? It's helpful for me. It's helpful for other people that watch the video. Speaking of helpful, I hope this video was, guys. I will see you in the next one. Thank you.